if we believe what we read, and I guess that's all we have is we read what the news media lets us read, or what somebody sends to you. But if you believe what you read, you have to believe that our president is on this mission to get his Green Deal done in the next couple of years, or at least get it so far into it that the next administration is going to have to stay with it if it's not him. You've had 2 years of where we are. You see, you kind of got that as a track record now. These next 2 years are probably going to pick up some steam. Hopefully the House is going to help us a little bit there. But if there's 4 more years of it, if you just multiply the cost of food by 2 for 2 more years from where it is now, where it was 2 years ago, then double it again, then you know, easy math tells you that we're headed in the wrong direction. And a lot of people right now, unfortunately, are living on their credit cards because they don't have this $7,000 or $8,000 inflation that's been put on them as a household, depending on how many people in that house. And that's going to come back to haunt them very, very soon because they can't get out from under it. They're still they're still on that. A lot of them are paying the minimum on it, and it's very sad for them at the end of the year to have a credit card debt of $7,000 or $8,000 and not have anything to show for it. They didn't buy anything. They didn't buy an appliance or something for their children or something for their household. They used that to exist. That's called an exist debt. That was just to eat and just to get back and forth to school or back and forth to work. How unfair to the American people for the inflation to be what it is today because of Joe Biden's policies. You know, a lot of things during the election when we talked about crime, we talked about the border, we talked about a whole lot of things that the Democrats were real clever of saying, well, that was the prior administration, or 2 administrations ago, or 3 administrations ago. And some of that you'd have to say, you know what? These problems have been around a long time. Crime's been around a long time. We've had a border problem for a long, long time. We've had a whole lot of things, and so they were slick and you couldn't really hang them on that. So all we want to do now for the next 2 years is just hone in on Joe Biden's policies. Just his policies. And you look at his policies and see if you're better off in 2 years from where you are now, and certainly 2 years ago. And I'll assure you, if something doesn't change that's magical, then you're going to be in a lot worse shape. And that's sad, because people are struggling right now. And he said when he was running against President Trump, he said it's going to be painful for the American people, but you're just going to have to endure it. Well, I don't think he's felt the cost of gas or the cost of food or any shortage of anything. So it's unfair for the American people to have to be done the way they're being done. And when you look around the country, you know, for some reason, people are always wanting to apologize for something that somebody else done. You know, I don't mind apologizing for something that I did, and I don't mind taking the blame for something if my company caused it or so forth. But right now, the United States is taking the blame for bad management in Washington. That we've, for some reason, over the years, the last 100 years, we've not done things right. So we come back now and we want to apologize. You see people apologizing everywhere for everything. They're sorry about this and they're sorry about that. And if we were going to be sorry for somebody that had hard times put on them years ago, I'd want to feel sorry for a military person that was drafted that didn't want to go in World War I or II or Korea or Vietnam, but came back with a limb missing, or maybe didn't come back. And do you see anybody standing in line today wanting to give their family hundreds of thousands of dollars because they had a hardship or they had something bad put on them that they didn't want? There's a lot of things happen in life that you don't really want. But, you know, if you just want to find somebody to blame, I guess we can always point the finger at somebody. But right now, if we don't change where America is today, if you don't change the administration in 2 years, I'm talking about clean the slate. Make sure you have the House, the Senate, and the White House. If you don't do that, then don't blame me. Don't point the finger at anybody. Like I said earlier, it's you. We have the vote. We have the power of the vote. And maybe in the last election, we come back and we say, well, you know, maybe they cheated a little bit. They didn't cheat 100 million votes. He got a lot of votes. We just need to they outworked us. And don't let that happen again. It's just like being in a prize fight. In the first round, you kind of seek one another out. And as it goes on, you're either behind or you're ahead, and the coach is telling you, your manager's telling you what you need to do. But what you can't never do is you can't give up until that last bell rings. And that's what it looks like we're doing. We're giving up. We're saying, well, it's not going to make any difference. It does. You have all the difference. You are the difference. The Congress, the Senate, and the White House work for you. For some reason, over the years, it's gotten to where they think they run everything for us. And unfortunately, they do. And we don't. And the only way we can change it is to vote them out. But we don't do it. I hear people complain about it all the time. And then when I talk to them about their vote, I say, well, it's not going to do any good. Well, evidently it doesn't if you don't vote. But we're going to have to. His policies are going to be devastating to this country. There's no way that you can farm out all of your petrochemical business. If we shut down drilling in this country and we shut down refineries, you got to understand, and I've talked about it before, that there's 40% of that barrel goes in petrochemicals for your plastics and all the things you use around your house. Isn't it going to be a shame if we have to import that too? It's not, and we talk about we don't like some of the illegal labor that's working in this country. But yet the amount of illegal people working in this country today, not that I'm condoning it, what I'm saying is that's a small amount of jobs when you look at the grand scheme of things. When you look at how much you import into this country on a yearly basis, it dwarfs the amount of illegal people in this country. We're letting foreign people build things for us every day. It's just coming from China or some other country. So for people just to hone, but they hone in just on the Mexican border, which is important because for some reason our president has opened that border now. We've always had a problem with the border. I'll grant you that, but not to the extent that we just gave up and wouldn't do anything about it. We're saying now that there's not a problem. There's 300 people dying every day from the fentanyl overdose. That the drugs are pouring in here. That's coming from China, and we all know it. And so what we want to do is just look the other way until it affects you. There's no two ways about what's going on. Just look at his policies. Look at shutting down the economy that this country has lived on and thrived on for over 100 years is ridiculous. And then to pump our oil out of storage, that's for our national defense, to lower the price around the country so he can get his people voted back in. If you didn't see through that, then something's wrong. We know what he did, and we're not going to put it back in so I guess now when we fill it back up, it's going to be Venezuela or Iran or Colombia or OPEC. That's who's going to fill our storage back up? That's a horrible situation for America to shut down our own drilling and to have to buy oil and go around the world asking for oil. How ridiculous. 2 years ago, we were a net exporter of oil. And now we're begging countries. And if you look at, if you read what I read, and I read every day something about what's going on, we've got countries all around the world right now that are gearing up to drill for oil. Small countries that don't produce 300,000 or 400,000 barrels a month. They're looking at going to 1 million barrels. You look at OPEC's looking at moving from 5 million to 7 million barrels. They're all looking at gearing up and putting billions of dollars in their drilling program while we're shutting ours down. Now, what does that tell you? They know we're destined for failure. And when we holler that we need help, they're going to be there, but it's not going to be there at $100 a barrel because we can't offset it. It'll be whatever price they want to charge us. And we're digging that hole today. And at the same time, we're making sure that we're laying people off in the process. And I don't know how many people the government thinks that we can just pay to sit at home. Right now, the prime working age, I think, is 34 to 54 or 25 to 54, somewhere in that area. We're at a record high. We got more people, more men sitting at home today than we had in 1940. And we had 15% unemployment in 1940. But we got that many people sitting at home today not working. What is the government? There's an end game here that they're promoting stay at home and don't go to work. And let's sub everything out. Let's let the rest of the world make everything for us because we want to be clean here. We want to watch our environment, make sure our environment's clean. But when you look at oil and gas and manufacturing, around the world. We're the cleanest. We're the lowest carbon emissions country in the world, and we're going to quit doing it. We're going to let somebody else take that portion over for us. They're not going to be as clean as us. You're going to breathe that air. You know, it goes up into the atmosphere. So what we're going to do, we're actually going to make it worse. I maintain in a few years, when you look at where we really are with carbon emissions, you're going to see that the world is in a worse situation than it is today, because the country that does it the best is going to quit. Now, what does that tell you? It's a sad situation. And, you know, again, I keep coming back to the same thing. Look at look at this next politician. When you hone in on who your next senator, the next congressman you want, the next president of the United States, look at the vice president a lot harder than you ever looked at a vice president before. Because I'm hoping that when the next president gets in there, that vice president is super strong, and he or she will pay close attention for 4 or 8 years and be our next leader. We need 16 to 12 years of good, solid judgment in the White House, or this country is going to get to a point that it's going to be hard to get back. You know, some people talk about a phrase called a slippery slope. When you start down a slippery slope, once you made that move, you can't get back. And I'm afraid America is already moving down the slippery slope. When giant oil companies say they're not going to repair a refinery, it's marginal, we'll shut that one down, then you're going to lose that. When we close down nuclear powerhouses across this country that supply 18% of our electricity, how are you going to get that back? I don't know that there'll ever be enough wind farms or solar panels to ever even pick that up. So I don't know that everything's been looked at real hard, except let's do this because this is what the administration wants to do, and we think that we're right. And I'm going to give them the benefit of the doubt. I'm going to say that right now Washington's not doing things deliberately to hurt us. I think they're just sold on their policies, but they're wrong. I mean, how many times have you thought you were going in the right direction and you found out you were going in the right direction later? Because if you can change on the fly, that's good. But when you devastate an industry that's been around 150 years and it leaves, you can't change that on the fly. It would take years and decades to try to get it back. And the amount of suffering this country is going to have financially, and there'll be a lot of mental problems with it too. Every time you have employment, you have a lot of mental problems. You have a lot of problems in the street. You have all kinds of, the police department gets put on alert every time you have this kind of problem. We strain our resources daily now, and what we're going to do is going to put them in overload. Please take it serious what I'm telling you, and you know read it for yourself. Every time we post an article about a town or a plant or a refinery that is shut down, you look that up yourself. And you tell me after we do 30 or 40 or 50 of those in this country, how long it's going to take us to ever get that back. Exxon, the big giant companies, they can buy the product and bring it in here and distribute it to us. So they're not going to lose out completely. But their stockholders, their board of directors don't want them to put billions of dollars in a marginal plant whenever the government says they don't want what that plant produces anyway. And that's just a good business decision not to do it. But at the same time, it's devastating to these communities across our nation. And I hope you'll help me and join with me and make sure that we pick the right politicians to run this country in the future.